Sitting by the Fire, a podcast on ancestral wisdom, medicine, heritage, and transformation by Anna Shoyom. Hello, everyone. A very good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on when you're joining us. Here at this next chapter of Sitting by the Fire with my dear colleague, Dr. Amber McZeal. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And as it's getting something like a habit, I would like to invite you to present yourself, because I think you can speak about what you do and who are you, maybe in the best possible way.
Sure. Thank you, Anna, for convening this space, this digital ceremony, and thank you for the invitation. So my name is Amber McZeal. I am originally from Louisiana. My ancestors date back in those lands to about the late 1700s, early 1800s. I descend from West African ancestries, Senegal, Mali, Nigeria, some Central, Cameroon, and Congo, along with a few European ancestral lines, mostly France, but a little Iberian Peninsula, dominantly Spain. And when they landed on Turtle Island in North America, they commingled with the indigenous folks down in the southern eastern United States. The name I'm aware of is the Chitimacha tribe. So I currently live in the Bay Area, and I guess I would describe my vocation as a sacred scholarship. I'm a writer, a vocalist. I've created this hub called Decolonizing the Psyche that kind of encapsulates or houses all of the offerings in the world. And the title alone expresses a lot. I have a passion for wholeness making in light of the many ruptures we've experienced, most specifically in the modern era, like the last 400 to 600 years. So that colonial period, that colonial charge is super pronounced in my own ancestral experience and personal lived experience. That's why all those lineages have come together in the first place. And yeah, my training, I did train in community liberation, Indigenous and ecological depth psychology, along with somatic depth psychology. And through that journey, stumbled upon ancestral medicine. And I'm sure we'll get more into that.
Yes, just a little bit more, not much.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's I want to confess that I'm an Ave, because I love the title you gave, the sacred scholar, like a mission, and with that, the purpose of decolonizing the psyche.
Mm-hmm.
Can I start with a question around that?
Yeah.
Why do we need to decolonize our psyche? I know it's a big question, but I think that's a very relevant question. And I tell you, it's because I do believe that we don't know how deeply colonized our psyche is. I think that's something that we discover as we get older, how we get like molded as a clay by the culture that we're living in. So coming from this angle, why is it so important that we decolonize our psyche?
Yeah, no, that's a great place to start. So the short of it, the short end of the stick is the colonial project reframed how we make meaning of the world and our place within it. Extending that short end of the stick, we've taken it for granted. this remaking of how we make meaning of the world. It's turned into a naturalized phenomenon that we don't recognize consciously, that we're actually born into, we're initiated into this way of interpreting symbols, this way of defining relationship. Take, for example, our relationship to the earth itself as older ancestor. It wasn't always an extractive relational dynamic. That was reshaped through 600, roughly 2000 plus years. And there were different points, nodal points on the historical timeline that were significant in that reshaping, like the theological reshaping, the decree that I give you dominion over the earth, over the beasts of land, over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air and sky. That's not how everybody related to our more than human family. But it's very much so taken for granted now. And then through the colonial project, sort of put those ideas, those ideologies on steroids. So not only do we have dominion over the earth, it's not even alive or sentient anymore. We can just extract and take and push people off and
Yeah.
what is it called? I call it de-enchant because
Yes.
the polarity being re-enchant. Disenchantment, but like a desacralizing, to make unholy, to make unsacred of the earth is something that was a part of that colonial project. The soul terrain is significant because it relates to symbols. It doesn't have to be that we went to school to study about dominion over the earth and people and bodies. The symbolic terrain carries the information, the psychic data that is conveying that message or that orientation.
So
Hence, decolonizing the psyche.
absolutely. There are several things that pop in my mind. First is from Jung, the archetypes that are like in the subterranean and the subconscious of the conscious psyche that can just invade our dreams, speaking in the universal language of symbols or popping up in different ways around us, like synchronicities. Now, when two different events seem to occur very close to each other or in the same moment, and how we need to train ourselves, our eyes to see. So maybe I really like this expression, desacralized, objectified.
Yeah.
We could also say now that it's an object, it's something different than me, something different than the eye. So it's something other. So that I really take off, I'd say some personalification, we could say it in English, like impersonalizing someone. And that's like really degrading a dictionary of the language as well, just as well the understanding of the soul or the psyche of the Terrans that earlier belonged to us, if I understand well. And I'm in a sideline thinking that today I read an article, skim read it, about sperm whales that they might have their own language. So actually, in National Geographic, there was an article that they are thinking about offering them personhood. And it was like, wow, yes, please, personhood. Like, what a gift is to be considered as a person in our world. And the person as someone, and they said that maybe they will be able to defend themselves one day on the court in their own language.
Wow.
And I think this is a beautiful way.
It is. You bringing Carl Jung into the room, decolonizing the psyche was birthed from my journey through his work, depth psychology. He's considered the father of depth psychology. And for all that is troubled and problematic about a Victorian era man of his time, he deserves respect. He gets my respect, the tip of the hat, because what he was doing was giving language. He was articulating the soul wounds of modern man.
Yeah.
And through his theories about the archetypes and the collective and personal unconscious and the symptoms of why these intrusions come up, he correlated with because modern man has pushed them out. Through its modernization, through its disconnection from what was conceived of as primitive. Yeah, this is why all of the neuroses came up. That's what he asserted. So part of his theories emerged through his contact with the other. He crossed the line. That is why it's the most fringe, avant-garde, or peripheral psychological practice on the ground, right? He wasn't even accepted among the modern traditional psychologists, psychiatrists. But there were a whole handful, perhaps, of practitioners in that time who were going to Kenya, who were going to Tanzania, the Horn of Africa. Jung himself interacted with the Navajo or the Dine people in North America. Due to the cultural climate of that time, they didn't have as much exchange because the perception of other, the creation of other was still very much intact. But through proximity even, he felt something emerging. When he stepped onto the grounds on the continent of Africa, he said, I feel like I've entered the oldest part of myself, of my being. And so there was this whole reclamation of a relationship to the earth, which is why he went and had an estate built in the middle of nowhere in Bowlingen, and no running water, no electricity, but submitting to the process of being in direct relationship with the animate world around. And he considered this a part of the healing of those soul wounds of modern man. So decolonizing the psyche is just extending his work by saying, all right, the warrior archetype is not just Mars or the Roman pantheon. There are many cultures around the world who have names for these patterns, these psychic dynamics. We've been doing this for a long time.
Yes.
And so we're opening up the frontier, opening up the terrain of the psyche to be more inclusive. There's more symbolic information available.
Absolutely. More symbolic information available. And I think we are so thirsty for this symbolism and symbolic information that the analytical mind cannot comprehend because it goes beyond. No? So maybe you need to sing about it. Maybe you need to write a poem about it. Maybe you need to move with it and dance it and express it all through the body. So I think also the rediscovering of our ancient connections with the earth, the land, the animistic word, the decolonization is also reclaiming the body as a terrain of life, as part of that fertile ground that we belong to. Because I think I'm also a body therapist, that we want to colonize the body. We don't want it to be as it is. No, with all the we could cite, of course, the mainstream media understanding of the body and how it is an entity, an other than we are. So it's not part of me. That's also, if we go back to Descartes, the French philosopher who said that I am because I think, I exist cogito ergo sum, that I exist because I think. I was so angry with him. I have a degree in philosophy and I pushed him away for 3 years. And I don't want to touch you. I don't want that. But then, of course, the contemplations and meditations, nice, but still, I think that what you speak about, at least for me, is important also from the perspective of coming back to the body as our home, coming back to the earth as our home. So it's not disconnected from it, because if we allow the body to be and coming down from the head, this very long path to the heart and to the intestine, as we also speak about it, maybe in the newer trauma approaches, psychosomatic psychology or approaches to heal, it's something that has to happen. So I think it's connected to the symbolic language, connected to that sometimes rituals have to happen through the body, and including whatever moisture the body is willing to give in whichever way.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you know, Descartes, that whole Cartesian split,
Yeah.
the whole Enlightenment is so curious. Um, the bulk of my research for my dissertation was in Black maternal health and the remaking of the African female body into a free labor factory for modernity. This was happening simultaneously with this Enlightenment emergence, right? Right in the middle of rationality and man's supreme role and lot on the earth was incredible depravity.
Yeah.
And dehumanization, the
Mm.
making of humans into non-human beings. And I feel strongly as I continue to go along this sacred scholarship journey, even his philosophical assertion was a distortion. When you look at other indigenous cultures, there is a reverence for head, for mind in general, like you need it. It's just that it's not a-relational. It's not
Mm.
about creating a hierarchy or a supremacy. You can't really have an operating head without the rest of the body.
It's true.
It's not going to happen. So it's delusional, even our recreation of that hierarchy of head above body, as if mind or thinking, intelligence doesn't extend throughout the soma. So something I've been humbled by through the journey, which is why I name it sacred scholarship. It's where the ancestors, it's why I stumbled into the halls of ancestral medicine to begin with, is them saying, you know, there's more than the books can contain for you to know.
Oh, okay. So how did that happen? How did you stumble upon the ancestors?
Yeah. So studying Black maternal health, there are major racial disparities that exist here.
Yes.
And so I'm rooted in decolonial theory, and I took that theoretical framework along with the depth psychological lens and said, let's look at this phenomena using both of these. And that automatically expands your ear to account for the unseen voices in the room, the unseen voices in the phenomena. So these racial disparities aren't just emerging in a vacuum of the last 20 years. They harken back to and connect to the origins of the field of obstetrics and gynecology and
Yeah.
how that took place during enslavement. It was enslaved women who were experimented on.
Mm.
So, along with that, there were slave breeding practices performed in order to create the free labor force, which then generated the exorbitant wealth. So capitalism and the invention of races go together.
Absolutely.
That's what I was encountering in the books. And then I started having dreams, which are a prominent site of ancestral connection. They're also a prominent site of tending in depth psychology.
Mm-hmm.
These older women were coming and saying, so you're just going to read about Louisiana in historical documents? You're not going to talk to us? And I'm going, who is us?
Mm-hmm.
It's my grandmothers. It's those elder ones who've come before me. Synchronistically, I found a YouTube video with Daniel Four in conversation with Bayo Akomolafe,
Mm.
and they were discussing decolonizing the dead. And I said, oh my God, that's it. That's
Yes.
what I need to do. I need to unfreeze my ancestors' voices. And so I ended up emailing Daniel, super excited, like, I don't know what this is, but I need to be a part of it. And he was like, cool, cool, cool. Let's go one step at a time. And that was wise. I got the book and ended up centering ancestral reverence and healing practices as a site of knowledge production in the dissertation.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So
Mm.
opening up dialogue with my ancestral grandmothers, eventually finding out my great-great-grandmother was a midwife in Louisiana. She caught lots of the babies in a 7-mile radius from
Mm.
our family home. And the other humbling insight, there were many, but one was around the profound healing capacity and innate alchemy of body. That even while this radical disconnection from body was occurring as a cultural phenomenon or as collective experiences among some groups of people, for me, African, Indigenous, descended people, they still had these practices of embodiment.
Yeah.
They didn't go away. They just went subaltern,
Mm.
went underground. They got named something else. But we carried a lot of the rituals and practices across the great ocean through the engine of colonization, and they just got termed differently.
Yeah. I sense a lot of wisdom in your people.
Mm.
And one thing that one can discover when they engage with ancestral reverence and hear listening to the voices that doesn't have a body and coming from our people is that the blessings somehow and the difficulties are already part of our lives. And I heard you saying that one of your grandmothers was a midwife, helping holding babies and helping women to ease the birth journey. And you've been writing about a dissertation of women giving birth under this super colonial exploitation of Indigenous and Black women. So I have a sense that she really wanted you to, I'm here, talk to me.
It was her. She was insistent. And yeah, to your point, you're absolutely right. The blessings, there were insights about how the potency of the blessing emerged in response to the challenges.
Oh yes, yes, they go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand, and they shape and form one another.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is telling you you don't have a right to life, you have no dignity, you're not human, then the alternate response, the contrary response, looks like, oh, yes, I do, to the 10th power. Oh, yes, I do have dignity, to the 100th power,
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
and that's what's available. I continue to discover each day. It's not wise to try and drink the whole ocean in one sip.
Impossible.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's one sip and one drop at a time. And also sitting, I discovered that sometimes I need to sit with it and allow it to just sink in and become part of what are the living waters of my body in a way.
Yeah.
And one curiosity I have, if I may ask another question around your practice, what changed when you came into living relationship with your people, with your ancestors, in your practice and in your scholar approach, reading of books that you said?
Mm-hmm. Well, the short answer is the library got far more vast. It's like, oh, I thought I was swimming through lots of content before. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and it was a journey of, I heard this from Prentice Hemphill, a wonderful thinker and spiritual practitioner. But they called it decolonial death rituals. So, sure, I land this thesis now, like the knowledge library, the library got bigger, but the road to get there was um quite a challenge. You
Mm.
know, there were, true to what we started talking about, um the symbolic terrain getting wider and more inclusive is what decolonizing the psyche is. The colonized psyche also has pillars of what is valuable and what is not. So in this case, I had to confront my belief, or unconsciously held belief, that this was not valid knowledge.
Mm.
These voices of those elder grandmothers, these elder ancestral grandmothers, was not only was it not valid or valuable, it was potentially damning, that you would be persecuted, exiled, tortured. Think of the witch hunts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To even open up into this terrain and engage in dialogue. And it didn't matter that I was actually smack dab in a field, depth psychology, where the pioneer, that's what he was doing. He was talking to his dead kin. He was having conversations with living images or psychic data through dreams. He was connecting with Gnostic mystics.
Yeah.
He was talking to the dead, y'all.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
still, I had to suffer through, um, almost like, if you can envision in your mind's eye, going in and chopping down the pillars. Like, oh, is that the block? Is that the resistance from receiving and engaging in this dialogue, in this dynamic? All right, I'm going to willingly sacrifice this
Mm.
as a value system, a part of the cultural inheritance. Let it be composted, and then that opens up the terrain.
Mm. Yeah. Opens up the terrain. It changes the perspective, becomes
Absolutely.
wider and many times layered, I think. So
Mm,
for me, I am a European white woman.
mhm,
This understanding of colonization, which was not present when I grew up, so I came to understand it as an adult,
mm,
and especially through ancestral medicine, it became layered and more layered and more layered and more layered. Though I
mm,
really, my university grade dissertation was about the phenomenology of myths. So I was really engaged in mythology and different understanding of the words and religions and so on. So because I was fascinated by the different ways of describing something that maybe there are some common roots and origins. So I really, really loved it and was fascinated by it. But of course, if you grew up in your own little bubble, in a
mm,
way, you're no way to know how big is the world outside of your bubble, how layered it is, how many different perspectives exist there. So it was a very interesting and not always easy discovery. So it also includes a lot of rearranging the mind and how the mind functions, the value system, and what is the truth of my own authenticity. Now, how can I stand up to do no harm if I really want not to do any harm? Because it looks different in every culture. So for me, the work of coming to be in relationship with something that my rational mind says, oh, you're going crazy. What are you talking about? Talking with them, oh, you should not do that. That's going to be like, I don't know, you're going to be expelled from humanity, you know? So the fear comes up and many things come up. And then the gradual understanding of the nervous system that, oh, that's familiar. I know this. So the nervous system is also in reaction to something that is not visible, not tangible to touch, but it's still there. And my body can tell that that is a truth in it. So for me, it was, okay, how to navigate through this and how to find those layers, like the substrates of the earth, like how deep shall I grow the roots to really get in touch with, if you want that symbol, like beautiful golden energy that pulsates in the heart of the earth, to be grounded in and be part of it. And I think it worth every drop of tears or blood or whatever it takes, because it's such a richer universe when we're there. It offers it's a quote from the movie of The Wisdom of Trauma of Dr. Gabor Mate's approach, compassionate inquiry, that I'm working with also, that when you can bring the listener, the neutral person in presence without judgment, and see the other as if it was you, as if it were you, you take the othering out. So it really becomes another person just like you. So it could be you. And I love this perspective. And I think that ancestral medicine approach, as Daniel created it, the framework that is, for me, is like really important and gives a lot of security, because I didn't grow up with this. But it's really like, okay, so I can hold your hand when you go in this path, and I can help you to reconnect with something so that you can see that this is a person just like you, even if it's an animal person, even if it's a tree person, or the ground that also has its movement below our feet. Yeah, that was not a question. It's rather
I'm just letting it resonate. There's a circling back to the sperm whales being given personhood. One thing I lift up in my work in the world is oppression distorts relationships. It sets the terrain to create the other as a negative thing. And this could all be different, as one of my mentors says. There is a tribe in South America, in Ecuador. I'm not sure if you've come across them, but when they elected their first indigenous leader, president, they took their indigenous value system and rewrote the Constitution. The name in their tongue is Sumac Cauce. It translates in Spanish, because that was the colonizing force there, buen vivir, good living. And in the principle of Sumac Cauce, nature is given personhood. So they adapted the indigenous knowledge and value system into the remaking of their social agreement.
Yes, that's very powerful.
It's very powerful. So they don't simply sign contracts for profit with logging companies. They engage in ritual practice to consult with the more than human kin.
Right? Wow.
there can be market, but market without the awareness of impact is
Mm.
what the colonial project is about,
Exactly.
right? So to your point, yeah, I do love ancestral medicine for this too. It's a gesture. While ancestral reverence practices are not new by any stretch of the imagination,
Exactly.
this particular framework is super compatible with our modern wound. It's well suited to repair the kind of relational distortions that have occurred in the
Mm.
last 400 to 600 years
Or more.
or more.
In, in terms of Europe, no? And I mean, just speaking about,
Oh,
but also possibly in Africa and Asia, when, you know, there is always someone who's wanting some land and they take it if they are stronger. I mean, all European history is since the Romans, it's present with it. And yeah, of course, it was still, I don't know to what extent us honoring culture, but there was like deity honoring culture. So they were recognizing power animals and different symbols of different deities and so on. So it was still a big pantheon of gods and goddesses. But sometimes I think that maybe everything started a lot earlier than we believe. Even in a way, colonization.
our ritual director, the cultural healing course was super insightful to
Mm,
this point of how far back does the transgression of sacred contract and sacred connection go? It is multi-layered, and there's no supremely pure culture on the earth.
no.
Um, when we talked about the cultural layer of colonization, the Mongols were brought up. Like, speaking of the East, it massacred millions of people in pursuit of empire, the building of empire. Part of my own ancestry, the Oyo Empire, was significant in colonizing or dominating the groups around them, called tribal warfare then, not colonization.
Yes.
And the distinction is important. It's relevant for us today, mainly because part of the project of colonization implicates culture strongly. I have to kill your God,
Yeah. And you have
right?
to adapt to my
You
rules
have
and
to
my
adopt
value system. Exactly. If you want to survive, if not, it doesn't
yours.
matter. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it's stretching back to the Roman Empire, and their tension with Egypt, for example, or the entire Levantine, much less the Crusades that happened in the last millennia within Europe, and then the Protestant, then the Reformation. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
we got a couple of chapters. We're gonna
Just,
have to,
just you.
yeah.
Um, how about rituals? What can rituals actually offer to the earth and why are they important? What do you think in this repairing I would say necessity, but also intention, because intentions hold, I think, a key for what we allow to pass through us back to the word. But yeah, so why rituals?
Hmm.
What do you think about them?
Yeah, ritual is like the language of the cosmos or quantum.
Mm,
Engaging it as a practice takes us outside of linear time very quickly. And then we have this portal, this opening, this moment where we step into how rich and complex, like an orchid is complex. Ritual allows us to step into that paradigm, if you will.
Mm.
It also is active engagement in the psychic composting, the emotional composting. I know that there was tons and tons and tons of grief that emerged during my dissertation work, naturally. And there was no way I could have moved through it or processed it without the help of the river and the ocean. So connecting in with something bigger than me to tell. It's like I'm telling on my own heart. I'm telling what I'm feeling right now. And the feeling is far bigger than my one body and my one nervous system can contain. Can you help me? Can you teach me? I mean, this is the brilliance of what we call now eco-metaphor, what indigenous practices call nature-based religious practice.
Mhm.
You know, like,
I love that we have new expressions for all things.
yeah, because there's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly.
But one thing I asked, speaking of intention, intentionally from these sweet waters in the Yoruba tradition, the West African earth-based spiritual practice that I adhere to, Oshun is the goddess or deity or consciousness of rivers, of sweet water and sweetness, also of fertility and birthing. So naturally, I was working closely with her. And I asked her to teach me the wisdom of eroding a thing without force. So the way that we can witness a river stone over time become this soft, tender, supple little entity. But the river's not pounding all the time. It's slowly moving across. And for millennia, our people have been looking at nature and going, biomimicry is the new name for it, right? But maybe I should try to do that with the waters of me, the emotional waters within. Slowly, poco a poco, you allow what's coming up to move into something bigger than you, to be metabolized, transformed, so that something else can emerge.
Yes. I see you. I feel you. I speechlessly can say that it is a great gift to lay back to something that is bigger than me. It's like allowing to be someone unimportant and average, like not being Atlas from the Greek mythology, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders and all the planet. So there is a togetherness with something wiser, as you say, something that has done it maybe a million times that I don't know yet how to do. And it's okay to ask for help, you know, and I think this is really strong decolonization of the psyche, to ask for help and to recognize that maybe we belong together with those who we didn't know we belonged together with. But when you ask for help, it is given to you.
Yeah.
One way or another, maybe in a different way than you were expecting it, but help is always given.
Yeah. It's a gift. It
is. Absolutely. Yeah. What you shared, Amber, reminded me how I met with a huge mountain of grief also. I mean, I already knew about it, but when I got into ancestral medicine and with my first lineage work, I was breathing a lot and remembered all the tears I cried and all that endless fountain of tears. that was there. And well, I didn't know what to do with it. That lineage offered a tree where I could come and bury it and keep burying it as much as it was. And I loved that practice. So it was sometimes I don't need to know how I'm going to get to the other side of whatever it is in my way. But yeah, I find that to reach out beyond the borders of my individualism and recognizing that there is a word outside of this skin. And without that word, this skin and this body would not be able to exist. That is maybe difficult, but then it gives a larger freedom to see ourselves also in the trees and the rivers and ask for help. Because for the Western person, human, meaning human here, it is really difficult to recognize that we belong. There are so many wounds of abandonment inside and outside, in our families, in our cultures, and how society layered on one another, especially of women. So I think that maybe in a very revolutionary way, a little bit as maybe in a context like Shannon, our ritual director, speaks about, you know, how to allow the connections to happen and refurbish in a way that mycelial connection below the ground, the fungi, and how every communication is happening through threads that we may not see, but it connects us to this larger scene of rivers, of trees, and birds that are flying in the sky.
I agree. I concur. And that's the gift of ritual, stepping back into, in a lot of ways, remembering. I can say for the insight from those French ancestors of mine points to the ways that that memory had to go underground through 1,000 years of terror. And the Indigenous and African insight, those ancestors show how that interconnection was actually the premise of enslavement. Meaning, knowledge of how to grow rice is why they captured certain groups along the Gold Coast of West Africa and brought them to Louisiana. It was specifically the knowledge base. It was specifically the ability to connect and communicate with the terrain.
Yeah.
It actually wasn't about their non-humanness at all. It was about this particular gift. So yeah, a lot of, I guess, the feeling tone it presents these days in nuanced ways, given our particular people's experiences, but it's more excavation. It's not like we're reinventing anything.
No.
This is part of what helped the human family survive. Is these sensibilities and capacities wherever on the earth they were.
Yes.
Right? And then the Celts had to let go of their songs because some religious indoctrination came through. And the French, you know, and those people had to let go of their ocean deities because some crown came in.
Yeah. What would you recommend, Amber, to someone who maybe just getting closer to speaking with their ancestors or discovering this work, or even rituals is something really new for them? Where to start?
Sit with a practitioner in the Ancestral Medicine Network.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think that's a great place to get the support and to get the affirmation. Part of decolonizing the psyche is to develop other language. Our
Mhm.
language is quite narrow. And so sometimes I know this was a part of my journey. I felt things. I was having spontaneous spiritual contact, but I didn't have the language for what was happening.
I
I,
agree.
you're right. Like I had an interpretation of that because my mother was a spiritualist.
Hmm.
You know? But as far as like a direct, this is what this is, and this is how you navigate it. I didn't get that through her. It was
That's
more like
important. That's part of
super,
purity, like mm,
yeah, to be able to name something. So to your point earlier, reach out for help and know that this isn't the only network, but it's a good one. And so
mm,
folks can reach out and even just getting a consult to talk about what's happening with you or avenues that would be beneficial to explore would be great. Tons of our practitioners have free consultations. Many have sliding scale and even pro bono session offerings. Also, I mean, it was super helpful to take a course in the Ancestral Medicine Network. That's what I did to sort of launch that pathway in my dissertation work. I took a class. I sat down, I learned something new or old.
something old and something new.
Like weddings.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, thank you very much, Amber. It is a pleasure to chat with you. The hour is getting very short, so I think maybe this is a good point to pause now and maybe later on, sometimes welcoming you back to chat about other topics.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Mm. Does it feel like a good point to pause here? How do you
Yeah,
feel? Yeah.
yeah, that feels right.
Okay. Thank you very much. I enjoyed. And thank you everyone for listening to us, watching us. You're very welcome to get in touch with Amber, me, or anyone in the network. You'll find all the details here below, as usual. And thank you. May we come back to connect with the earth under our feet.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure we.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.